Hello, welcome to Microsoft Azure training series powered by ATCSL. My name is Neeraj. I am an enterprise architect, Microsoft certified Azure Administrator Associate, and I will be your instructor for this course. Today, we are going to have a complete hands-on session on creating Azure Virtual Network. This is part 2 of the Azure Virtual Network series. And this in turn is a part of AZ100 certification, configure and manage virtual networks. We will also create subnets, the network security groups, and we will also see how the network interfaces and IP addresses are created and are allocated to the resources that are created within the subnets of the Azure Virtual Network. So let's dive into the demo and see how the Azure Virtual Networks are created. Let's get started. In this demo, we are going to create Azure Virtual Network and all of its subsequent dependencies like subnets or network interfaces or IP addresses, as well as the network security groups. But even before that, we need to create the resource groups, which are directly the part of the subscription that we have. And what I have done for our ease, just for the tracking purposes, I have created what we need to create and in what order. So the first thing we are going to do is to create a resource group. We are then going to create a virtual network. And subnets are a part of creating a virtual network. And once the subnets are created, we will additionally create another subnet. And I'll throw in more lights and I'll tell more details about it once we are into the portal and when we actually create the subnets. So I'll tell you the reasons and then we will create the subnets. As a step 4, we are going to create the network security groups, and we will also see how to create the NICs or the IP addresses. So let's start by firing up the browser, which we already have it here. We will type in portal.azure.com. And here I have this account using which I'll log in to my active subscription. I have a pay-as-you-go subscription for Azure. And when I log in, it will present before me a dashboard that I can see now. It has two different sections, the left and the right. The left section has the favorites and from where I can create different resources. And then we have the actual dashboard, which will detail out whatever I have created, or the resources that we create can be pinned to the dashboard for future references and quick access. Also, if you see on the left hand side, all these icons or all these links that I have are part of my favorites. So this is not the default view. If you want any link to be available in the favorites, you need to search it and then click on the star button to tag it to your favorites. So let's get started with creating a resource group. So first requirement is to have an active subscription, and then inside the subscription we need to have a resource group, because any resource that we create, including the virtual network, needs to be inside the resource group. So if you see here, we do not have any resource group, any existing resource group. So we'll click on the add button. And this is going to be fairly simple and very quick. I'll give it a name of ATCSL, and the region is Central US. If you see, there are different regions around the globe that I can create. It can be UK South, UK West, or the West Central US, even West India. But since I am located in the Central US, it has automatically determined my location, and I'll leave that as default. I'll review and create, and then create. So it will hardly take any time and it will get created. If you want to go to a resource, you can either go through the notification that was just displayed. I can pin that resource to the dashboard as I already mentioned previously, or I can go to the resource using this button. Since I already am at that place, resource groups, I can click on the refresh button and I see that I'm presented with the ATCSL resource group that I just created. Now that the resource group has been created, I can create my virtual network. To create a virtual network, we will click on virtual networks from the favorites and click on add. Now that I have the blade open for the creation of the virtual network, I'll give it a name. So the name that I'm going to give it is ATCSL underscore VNet. That is for virtual network. Then I have the addresses space. This is the private addresses space, and we will be using the class C IP addresses, and we will use the CIDR notification. If you click on the icon for the information, it says the virtual network's address range in the CIDR notation. Now, this is, as I already told you, this is going to be class C, and since this is accessed internally, we are going to give it an IP range either of 10.0.0.0 or 172.16 or until 172.31 or 192.168. As you all must be already aware of, these are some of the IP address ranges which are used within the offices, within the corporates, for the internal communications or the internal network setup. These are not the public IP addresses. These are the IP addresses which are allocated to the resources inside the corporate. Okay. Similarly, here also we will give it an address range, but we have to be very, very mindful when we are giving it an address range when we are creating a virtual network. Why? Because at times, if we are going to have a situation where we are going to have both on-premises and Azure resources communicating with each other, the IP addresses cannot overlap. Okay, so if your on-premises is 192.168, mind you, you need to have this different, not 192.168. You can have it as 10.10 or 10.0.0 range, or you can use 172.16 or 172.31. You can use 192.168, but there is a possibility that the on-premises IP can overlap with the IP address of any resource that you create here. So it's better to use a different IP address, right? So what we are going to do now is give it an IP address range with the CIDR notation. And my subscription is pay as you go. The resource group is ATCSL. The location is, as usual, Central US. I'll leave it as Central US. The subnet name. Now, for the subnet name, currently is default, but we will change it. What we want is to create two different subnets. Okay, two different subnets. One subnet will have two virtual machines acting as the web front-end servers or the front-end servers, and another subnet for the data tier, which will be hosting the databases and have two different virtual machines. So for this one, let us go ahead and create the first subnet, which we can create either separately or while creating the virtual network. So we will create the DB subnet separately. Let's create the WFE subnet now. We'll give it a name of ATCSL underscore VNet underscore WFE, just to be very, very clear about the naming convention that we are going to have. Okay, and the address range should be within the IP address range that we have mentioned for our virtual network. So if you see there above IP address range in the CIDR notation that we have for the VNet that we gave, that is from 10.10.0.0 until 10.10.255.255. There is a total of 65536 addresses that we have in our installed for now, because and any of the resources that we create will be assigned one IP addresses within that range. Okay. Now the subnet that we are creating, ATCSL underscore VNet underscore WFE, should be within the range of the IP addresses of the VNet. So we'll create this again using the CIDR notation 10.10.1.0/24. Now this will ensure that we have 0 to 255 resources that we can create inside this subnet. Okay, so we have 255, 256 IP addresses that we can use. Now going forward, when we actually create the subnet and we look at the subnet, the available IP addresses for a location, it will just be 251 and not 256. Why? Because those remaining 5 IP addresses are used internally by Azure and we cannot use it. So in essence, we are only getting 251 IP addresses. Okay. We'll keep the DDoS protection to basic. We also have the option to move it to standard, but basic is provided free to us, and we will keep it as is. DDoS is something that I'll come later in the session, but for now, this is a kind of protection that we get by default from Azure. And basic is free of cost for us, as I already told you. Now we will leave service endpoints as disable, firewall as disable, and we'll click on create. It will validate and then it will start creating virtual network for us. It will not take much time before the virtual network gets created. We will wait for some time. So you see the notification. The deployment has succeeded, and I can go to the resource and I can also pin it to the dashboard. We'll not do anything because we do not want to pin it to the dashboard for now, and we already are in the virtual network, so we'll just refresh. So we see that the ATCSL underscore VNet virtual network has been created. If we click on the virtual network, what do we see? We see that we had the address space of 10.0.0.0 space /16, which we mentioned during the creation of the virtual network. And if we go to the subnets, we see that a subnet has been created for us, which we gave the name as ATCSL underscore VNet underscore WFE. And that has an IP address of 10.10.1.0/24, that IP address range. Now you must have noticed by now that we have 251 available addresses that can be assigned. And I already told you that the remaining of the 5 IP addresses, we cannot allocate them. Azure uses it for internal purposes. Okay. Now here also we have the DDoS protection, which we saw that we kept it as basic. We also have the option for the DNS servers, but that is for a later session. I'll come there later. For now, we'll go back to the overview. And we see that we have the Azure Virtual Network with location as Central US and inside our subscription as pay as you go. The next that we are going to do is create the subnets. How do you do that? So I can click on the subnets. Okay. And I can go from here, and I have another option to just click on the subnets. And here I already have one, and I can create one additional subnet. I also have an option to create a gateway subnet, which, if you remember from our overview session that we did, that is the first session of the series. If you remember that, we need to create the VPN gateway in a different subnet altogether. It cannot be created inside an existing subnet. And this is where you can create the gateway subnet. If you have not seen that video and are unfamiliar with it, I would suggest to go to the previous session that we had for the overview, so that you have the crystal clear understanding of what exactly are VPN gateways and how to have a hybrid connectivity, or how to connect on-premises servers or on-premises resources to the Azure resources. For now, we'll limit ourselves to creating a subnet. And this one, as I already told you, we will name it as ATCSL underscore VNet underscore DB. And this particular subnet is going to have two virtual machines, which will have the data, which will have the databases. Okay, so this is the data tier. Now, I already consumed 10.10.1.0/24. So that is the reason why we are presented with 10.10.0.0/24 by default. So if we want, we don't have to do anything. We can go ahead and click on create. But here, what we are going to do is I'll change this to 10.10.2.0.24. Okay. See the very nice thing here, 10.10.0.0 to 10.10.0.255, that is 256 total, 251 to be used, and 5 Azure reserved addresses. Now, network security group we are going to create, as I already had shown you before we started the demo. But for now, we will leave it as none, no routing table. And service endpoints, nothing for that, and nothing for the subnet delegation. We'll click on OK, and this will start deploying the additional subnet that we want. So we have one resource group, ATCSL. We have one virtual network. We have two subnets. And now we are going to create virtual machines. But before we go and create virtual machines, let me show you something. Let me go to network security group, and here we see that nothing has been created. This is completely blank, correct? So either I can create the network security group from here, or the network security group is created by default when we create a virtual machine. And along with the virtual machine, apart from the network security group, the network interfaces and the IP addresses also gets created. Okay, so let me see if I have that in my favorites. Yes. So if you go to network interfaces, there is nothing. And do I have the IP addresses? No, it is not there. So let us not worry about it. But both network interfaces, as you see here, or the network security group, does not have anything. We will go ahead and create virtual machines. We'll click on add. And I'm presented with a blade which has the details to create the virtual machine. The subscription is pay as you go. The resource group is ATCSL. I can create a new resource group, but we don't want it for now. And we can have the virtual machine name as WFE01. The region is Central US. For now, let us leave the availability options, which includes the availability zone and the availability set, which is for the scaling in and out, but and availability in different regions, but we will leave it for now. The image is the kind of server that you want. It can be Ubuntu server, it can be a Linux server, or it can be a Windows server with different flavors. We can have Windows Server to 2016 data center, we can have 2012 R2 data center, we can have 2008 R2 SP1, so on and so forth. So these are the different versions of the images that are available for you to easily and quickly create your virtual machine that you want to create. Okay, so what we are going to do is select the Windows Server 2016 data center. The size by default is a standard DS1v2 with one virtual CPU and 3.5 GB of memory. If we want, we can go ahead and change the size. And this is what we are presented with in a pay-as-you-go subscription. These are the ones that I can create. Each of these VM size has different virtual CPUs, has different RAM available. They have different data disks. I mean, the number of data disks that are available, and with the maximum IOPS. And it has a temporary storage of 4 GB or 16 GB or 7 GB or 32 GB, whatever. And then each one of them, depending on the size, will also have different costs. And mind you, each one of them also has the IP addresses that can be assigned, or the network interfaces that can be assigned to a particular VM. For our demo purposes, we will leave it as is now, and we will close the blade. We'll create a user that can access the virtual machine over the RDP, or can RDP the machine. So we will create that as ATCSL admin, and we will give it a user password. We'll confirm the password once again. And yes, the password matches all the criteria that is there. Now, as a next option, we have the public inbound ports. We have none, or we have allow selected ports. So let us see what happens. If we click on the allow selected ports, we have the select inbound ports. Okay, so what are these? This virtual machine will now be able to be accessed over these 4, or any one of them, or more than one, whatever we select. So for this particular virtual machine, we will select HTTP, HTTPS, and RDP. As soon as you select RDP, you are presented with a warning which says that these ports will be open to the internet. Use the advanced control to limit inbound traffic to known IP addresses. I'll show in more detail how this works when we are creating the network security group separately. But for now, it is showing this warning because the RDP will happen over the public internet, and that is where it shows a security warning. Now, I can save up to 49% of the cost, and that is a huge amount, if I already have a license for the Windows Server. But if we do not have any license, it's fairly okay. Since I don't have it, I leave it to no. Then we have the disks option. The operating system disk can be premium, or standard SSD, or standard HDD. Obviously, any SSD will incur more cost, whereas the standard HDD will have a lower cost. We'll leave it to premium SSD. And then if you look at the networking part, this is very important. Now, virtual network is VNet, and subnet is ATCSL VNet WFE. what we can do is we have different subnets available here, WFE or DP. I can create this virtual machine in any of the subnets. But since we are creating a front-end server, let us create this in the underscore WFE subnet. It will create a WFE01 IP address by default itself. And the network security group is basic. It will automatically create a network security group because we do not have any existing network security group, or we do not have the network security group. Now we selected the inbound ports, right? And this is shown here. Rest is all for the management. If you want the boot diagnostics to be done or the OS guest diagnostics, then we have the diagnostics storage account that will be created. And we also have three more other things available, which are identity, auto shutdown, and backup, which are turned off by default. And then these are the guest configuration options, or the tags that we want to create. So tags are something that we want to create if we want to associate it with some cost, or when we are monitoring it, or we are talking about the cost management. So which department or who will incur the cost, so we can tag it to that particular department name or something. Finally, we review and create. So once the validation is passed, which it did, we'll click on create. So the it initialized, and then the deployment was in progress. We'll be presented with a dashboard where it will say that your deployment is underway, and one by one it will start creating the resources along with the virtual machine. What are the resources? I told you, right? It is the network security group, the network interfaces, and the IP addresses. Okay, so this one will definitely take some time, but meanwhile we'll go ahead and create another WFE. Okay, so we will go to the virtual machine again. We'll click on add. Again, all the options remains the same. We'll just do WFE02 and we'll choose the Windows Server 2016 data center. Username is atcsl user atcsl admin, and the password. So we have SQL Server 2016 Service Pack 1 Enterprise on Windows Server 2016. I'll click on this and see, now this time the size of the VM has changed. It is now D2SV3 with 2 virtual CPUs and 8 GB of memory. Okay. The administration account is the password, or it can have a SSH public key to access it over the internet, but we will keep it as password. Username will give atcsl admin, and the password is again what I had been given. That is passed. Now the next option is with login with Azure Active Directory preview. Will not do anything for now. We'll keep it as off. And the public inbound port is none. I'm not going to allow this to be accessed via the HTTP or HTTPS, and and I'll just allow the RDP for this one, so that I can specify the specific IP address and the port through which the request will be coming, or simply the IP address range through which the request will be coming to this machine. So I'll click on review and create, and finally when it gets validated I can create. But we forgot one thing. You know what? I'll go to networking, and again it is creating another same subnet. It is choosing the first subnet by default which we created because it still has the availability to add on more resources. But since we already had created another subnet for the database tier, we'll choose that one. And we'll simply review and create it once again. Once validated, we'll click on create. So this is getting deployed, but let us create one more virtual machine. And name it as DB2. Again, I'll browse all images. I'll click on databases, and I'll type in here Azure SQL and see what options. And where did it go? Let me type in here SQL Server 2016, and we have it here. So SQL Server 2016 Service Pack 1 Enterprise on Windows Server 2016. So I'll click on that. Again, for the password, I'll use the ATCSL admin. I'll use the password as I had earlier. Something wrong. Yes. This also, I'll have it RDP for now, and I'll review and create. So it has passed the validation, but again we forgot to change the subnet. So we will change it to DB. We'll review and create once again. And once done, we'll click on create. Notice the price mentioned here per hour. So this database machine that I'm creating will have 0.1100 US dollars per hour. So each of the resource that we create will incur certain cost, and that is the per hour cost that we have to incur. So when we are creating a resource, we have to be very mindful of what we are doing and what we are creating. What resources are in use and what resources can be shut down and removed immediately, so that extra cost is not incurred. And that is the beauty of Azure, that you will only pay the amount for the resources that you are going to use. There is nothing extra or no extra charge is taken from you. You pay for what you are using, right? We'll go to the virtual machines and see what already has been done. So we see that the resources have been deployed, all the virtual machines are ready, and we have DB01, DB02, and WFE01 and WFE02. So each one of those DB01 and 02 are part of the DB subnet, whereas the WFE01 and 02 are the part of the WFE subnet. All the four resources are running. So for example, if I go to WFE02, it will show me that this is just an example. Each one of them has a public IP address assigned to it. So if you see here, it will show you 40.122.65.214 as a public IP address. And it was a standard DS1v2. Okay. And see here, the virtual network and subnet, it is a part of the WFE subnet. Whereas if we close this blade and go to DB02, which was created, now this is also given a public IP address, which is 40.122.209.48, and it is a part of the DB subnet. Okay. So in the previous session that we had for the virtual network, which was the overview session, I told you that all the resources within the virtual network can communicate with each other. And I'll show you in a moment. So if I close this blade, I have the WFE01. I can click on connect and I can download the RDP file. And that is WFE01. Similarly, if I close the blade and click on WFE02, again I can click on connect and I can download the RDP file. So I have two RDP files. One is WFE01 and the other one is WFE02. I'll click on WFE01, click on connect, provide the user ID which I created, ATCSL admin with a password. I'll click on OK. And similarly, I'll click on WFE02, click on connect, use more choices, use different account. I'm sorry, by that time it came up. So use different account, ATCSL admin, and the password is so if you see here, we have this IP address 40.113.202.38. This is one of the machines, and the other one is a little confused, I guess I am. Yeah, this is the first WFE, and the 214 is another WFE. So we have 40.122.65.214. So the virtual machine is still loading. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Let us see if the first virtual machine is up and it is completely ready for us. So one thing that I wanted to share with you is any resource, or rather any virtual machine that we create that is internet ready. So if you open the browser and try to Google or open a website, it will open. Okay. The server manager is firing up for WFE01. Let it open. And there we have. We'll try to look at the local server. It's still loading. Yep. Here we are. Okay. So if you see the computer name there, it is WFE01, which is the first thing. And the Windows firewall is on. I can go ahead and click on off to switch off the Windows firewall. Also, if you see, the remote management is enabled along with the remote desktop. So I can RDP it. For the Ethernet, I have the IPv4 address assigned. And what is that IP address? Let us see. So we'll click on the search icon. We will click on CMD. And I can run it as an administrator. I'll do an IP config. And here we are presented with the IP address of 10.10.1.4 and with the default gateway of 10.10.1.1. Do you remember we created the default gateway of 10.10.1.1? No? Okay, so yeah, that's correct. We did not create any gateway with this IP address 10.10.1.1. And remember, I told you that some of the IP addresses are reserved by Azure. And this is what it does. It creates a default gateway for us using which we can access the internet. And one of them is this default gateway, which is 10.10.1.1. And it also created a virtual machine for us with an IP address of 10.10.1.4. Now, this IP address, although is a dynamic IP address, it's not static, but it will remain with this system, with this virtual machine, unless and until we release it by removing the resource altogether. Now, if we go to the Ethernet here, click and open the resource, open the network, click on the change adapter setting, right click on it, click on the properties, and see the TCP IPv4, click on properties. We see that the IP address is not assigned to this particular NIC. No hard coding here. So in case you need to change the IP address of this particular virtual machine or this particular resource, you need to do it via either the PowerShell or by using the portal. You can do it from there, but never ever come here to change the IP address. And if at any time you are coming and changing the IP addresses here, mind you, you're doing something very wrong, and never do it. And keep that in mind, okay? So you're not going to change the IP address from here. Click close, and we are done. We'll click close here, we'll close this, and we'll let remain the command prompt open. Meanwhile, I'll go to the another virtual machine that we had created. Now again, I'll go to the local server. And here we see that this computer name is WFE02. The firewall is on. And again, this also has an IP address assigned to it. Let us fire up the CMD here. We'll right click on it and run as admin. And we'll do an IP config. What we see here is, again, since this was a part of the WFE subnet, it is sharing the same default gateway of 10.10.1.1 as the WFE01, and this has been assigned the next available IP address, which is 10.10.1.5. Okay. Now, let us see if it is going to it is able to ping the WFE01, and WFE01 is able to ping this resource. Okay, so first of all, we'll do a host name and see the name. It is WFE2, and for my WFE1, which is this one, if we type host name, it should give me WFE01. Now what I'll do is I will ping WFE02. What do you think is going to happen? Is it going to ping or bring back the response? Let us see. No response. It is request timeout. But yes, if you see here, it is able to resolve the host name. So when we type in WFE02, it is able to resolve to WFE02 to some address .internal.cloudapp.net, and it is able to resolve the IP address, which is 10.10.1.5. With we have that data, right? So how do these resources interact with each other and bring back the responses? We saw one thing in the server manager, right? And that is the Windows firewall is on. And similar is the case with another WFE for which we see the Windows firewall is on. We'll click on the Windows firewall. We'll turn off the Windows firewall and we'll click on OK. We'll close this. Come back to the host 1, which is WFE01. Open the command prompt again and again try to ping WFE02. Now this time, since the firewall is off, we see that the server is able to take the request and send back the response. So earlier also, this system, this virtual machine with the host name of WFE01 was able to resolve the WFE02 host name, but it was not able to bring in the response back. Now this time, after we switched off the firewall of the WFE02 server, now it is bringing back the response. And similarly, if we try and switch off the firewall here, turn off, okay. Minimize this, go to my another virtual machine, fire up the CMD, and okay, ping WFE02, sorry, 01. Here we go. It is able to bring in the response. So both the resources here are able to talk to each other. So that is how all the resources within the virtual network can communicate with each other. And we can limit or we can restrict the access from the public internet to this particular VM, these particular VMs, using the network security group or the Windows firewall. So network security group is a kind of a firewall. It has a list of rules which helps you manage a resource. So let us go ahead and create the network security group for us. So we will minimize, and the next thing that we are going to do is create the network security group. But before that, let us see something. We saw earlier that there were no security groups, network security groups created, and there were no network interfaces as well. But now that we have created virtual machines, that in turn will create these resources by default, unless and until that was earlier created and we had provided it during the creation of the VMs. Since we did not, we have the defaults created now. So if I go to the network security group, we will see that all the 4 resources that we created, all the 4 VMs that we created into the 2 different subnets will have 4 different network security groups. And similarly, if we go to the network interfaces, each one of them will have its own separate network interfaces. Okay. Coming back to the network security groups. Now, if you already have gone through my previous session on Azure networking, Azure Virtual Networks, part 1, then you will remember that if we assign the network security group to individual virtual machines, then each virtual machine can have similar or different network security group rules, and each one of them have to be handled and managed separately. The second option for us is to create a network security group for each of the subnet or for a group of subnets, and then assign the NSG, that particular NSG that we created, to the subnet, and any and every resource that is created within the subnet will follow the same set of rules that was created within the NSG. So let us create another NSG here. We'll go ahead and click on add, and we will name it as ATCSL WFE, WFE underscore NSG. So by the name, it is evident that I'm going to create this WFE specifically for the web front-end servers. Okay, the subscription remains the same as pay as you go. The resource group should be ATCSL. Now here you see another resource group, which is Network Watcher RG. I'll come back to that later, but now we are going to select ATCSL. The location is Central US, and we'll click on create. So we have 4, and now we'll have one additional network security group which is getting deployed. And there you go. We have the resource created. So we'll click on refresh, and here it is. Now here we see that the blade opens and it showcases all the inbound and the outbound security rules that were created by default. This is very, very important, not just as a part of the examination, but as a real world security rule implications as well. So when we have the inbound and the outbound security rules, this can manage the inbound and the outbound traffic to that particular resource to which it is assigned. So we have both the inbound security. There are certain default rules that are created. And if I click on the inbound security rules, we have 3 default inbound security rules. We'll click on add, and we will add the inbound traffic for the HTTP and HTTPS, and then we will also allow the traffic for RDP, which is on port 3389. So we will start with HTTPS. What is the source? The source here is any source or any resource from which the request is coming, and it can be from any port. So that is why the source port ranges is represented as asterisk. The destination is any. Now understand that this network resource group is a generic resource group that we are creating. Network security group, I'm sorry. So this network security group is a generic security group that we are creating. It is not yet assigned to any of the resources. So that is why the destination is any, and port should be port 80. Okay, the protocol is 80. I will allow it at the priority 100. I'll give it the name of port 80, and I'll click add. One thing to understand here, which is very important, is that the lower the priority number, the higher the priority. And the higher the priority number, the lower the priority. So all these rules that are presented here can be overridden by creating a new rule, but with a lower priority number. So those rules are executed, and these can be neglected. So, and that can be done by creating rules with the lower priority number. Okay, so we have it for HTTP. So you see here port 80, right? To make it more clear, let us give it a name. Oh, I cannot change the name here now. Let it be. That is not a problem. And we'll go ahead and create one more. We will, for this one, the port should be 443, and we'll give it a name of HTTPS to make it more precise. So name can be any. So earlier one I created with port 80, that could be, I could have given it a name of HTTP, but I missed that. But for now, for 443, we have specifically mentioned HTTPS. Now, I will add one additional rule for RDP. The source can be any, and the source port ranges can be any, whereas the destination can be any, but the port number should be 3389. With the protocol of TCP, I will allow with a priority of 120, and I'll give it the name of RDP. Okay, and I'll click on add. So it will add to the inbound security rules. For now, it will not show any errors or warning. It will get added, but I'll show you some magic. It has been created. Now when we go to the overview and view it, it will show a yellow triangle here. Okay, or orange. Okay. So orange triangle, and this represents that we have opened the port for the RDP over the public internet, right? So how that can be handled? If we click here, I could have given the source IP addresses and then mention specific IP addresses from which this resource, or to whichever resource this network security group is attached to, can be accessed. Okay, making it more secure, right? So I'll discard this, and that is fine. I'll close this, and I'll close this blade as well. So now we have the ATCSL WFE NSG. So there are two ways to get it assigned to the resources. One is when we are creating a resource. That is, when we are creating a virtual machine, we can assign the network security group, or we can, while creating the subnet, we can assign the network security group, or from within the network security group as well, we can assign it to the subnet. So if you see here, it says there is no association, and I can create an association. Whereas if we go to the virtual network, open the virtual network, click on subnets, and open the VNet WFE, we see that there are no network security group assigned. I can click on network security group, and then I can select on ATCSL WFE NSG, and once done, I can click on save. What happens now? Now that we have assigned the network security group NSG to this particular subnet, all the virtual machines, that is the WFEs that we created, will have to follow all the inbound and the outbound rules that are defined, that are listed inside the ATCSL_WFE_NSG network security group. Okay. Coming back to the resource groups. Now, I promised you that I'll tell you about the Network Watcher RG. Now, this is something which has been added recently by Microsoft. So, I did not create this network security group, but this is I did not create this resource group, but this was created by default when I created other resources or the resource group ATCSL. So, this Network Watcher is something which is used for the monitoring purposes. Okay, so it has different options. If you see, the subscription is pay as you go and with the subscription ID, and I can add a tag here, and if we see the activity log, it will tell me what has happened. Okay, so it will tell me that the resource group was updated, or the network watcher was created or updated. We deleted the resource group, and then we created the network resource group, and all sort of things it will tell me. So this is something which is added by Microsoft recently, and this was not there previously. So what we can do is, when this network watcher RG resource group is added, we can add events and then event handlers to manage the events that are generated as a part of the actions that we are performing. Any uploads to the storage account or anything that we are doing should, everything we can manage it. Okay. One very, very important thing that should be taken as a part of this demo is, let us go to the storage accounts. Here we see that one of the storage account is present, which is ATCSL DIAG. Okay, DIAG. So we did not create this. This automatically got created when we were creating the resources. Why? Because any and every resource needs to be inside a storage account. I mean, they have the storage account. Where will you have the virtual machines? The VHDs, the virtual hard drives, will be stored inside the storage. So we have different kind of storages, which is the blob, the files, the tables, and the queues. If we click on the blobs, we will see that there are four different names here, which are unique. And if we click on them, we will see that it further has two different page blobs. Okay. Similarly, if we close this blade and go back and click on another blob file, we will see that again there are two page blobs. So there are different kind of blob storages: the page blob, the block blob. So it will store different kinds of data. It will have the disk data, it will have the virtual hard drives. So that is for the storages. When we learn about the storages, I'll tell in more detail what are storages and what are storage accounts, and then how storage work, and what all different kind of storage options do we have available. For now, if you close this, and if you click on the storage again, we see that we have four different services available, which is blobs, files, tables, and queues. Just an overview here. So blobs, we know already that this is for the large files, or for the VHDs, or for the data disks. The files, as usual, are for files. The tables, although they are not exactly similar to the relational databases, but yes, we can query them, and we can have we can have those relationships, and we can query them. We can see the data in a tabular format. Okay, and then we have the queues. So more about the storages in the storage section, but for now I think we should go back to the resource groups and click on ATCSL, and there we are. So this concludes our session for creating the Azure Virtual Network. Here we have seen how the resource groups are created, which are the part of the subscription, and how all the resources are created within the resource groups. So we created the Azure Virtual Network, and then we created the subnets, the network interfaces, the IP addresses, and how the default NICs, IP addresses, and the NSGs get created, and how can we create a separate network security group and attach it either directly to the resources or to the subnets. So this concludes our session today. I hope this session was very informative for you and you enjoyed the session with me. And I know it has been a little long, but I think I was able to clarify your understanding about the Azure Virtual Network and hope you enjoyed it. In summary, what have we learned today? We saw how to create the Azure Virtual Network using the Azure portal. Now, there are other ways as well to create the Azure Virtual Network using PowerShell, and that is for a different session altogether. But for this session, we saw how to use the Azure portal to create the VNets. We also learned how to create the subnets, the network security groups, NICs, and IP addresses, and how these resources are associated with the virtual machine whenever the virtual machine gets created. We also learned how each one of these resources can be separately created and associated with the resources, like the network security groups. They can be created separately and then associate with the subnets that we have created. And all the virtual machines within the subnet will follow the rules that is defined within the network security group that we have created. All the training materials are available at azuretraining.com, so you can download all the training material from there and you can read the details there also as well. And I hope this session was really informative for you. So keep assuring. Thank you.